Banaza is a nobody who got summoned to another world as a useless level 1 and got discarded like toilet paper. However, everything changes when he levels up and unlocks infinite magic powers, so he uses it to tame an S-rank wolf girl and clap everyone. This story starts with Banaza suddenly getting summoned to a temple where a bunch of mages explain that they summoned him to fight the Dark One as their hero. After explaining that the gods usually grant hero candidates supernatural abilities, the priestess takes one look at Banaza's stats and freezes in horror because he is the weakest hero they have ever summoned. Seeing this, Banaza asks to be sent back to his world, but then a blonde hero appears with superhuman stats, so they all flock to him and escort him to the king. Hours later, Banaza finally gets an audience with the king, who merely looks at him with disgust, while his assistant explains he cannot go back because the summoning spell only works one way. As compensation, they permit him to start a new life in the forest of Delaveza, and Banaza accepts, not realizing that it's a ploy to get rid of him. Soon after, Banaza gets loaded into a carriage and spends 20 days on the road before finally reaching the outskirts of the Delaveza forest. After handing Banaza a bottomless bag, the demi-human driver then warns him to leave as soon as possible because the Dark Army is said to be residing in the forest. After he leaves, Banaza activates the bag and reads through its contents before pulling out a sword and realizing that it's just a decorated piece of junk. Just then, he notices some slimes and chooses to ignore them, but when they attack him first, he uses his sword to cut them down. The next moment, a window appears showing that he has leveled up, but his stats all show an infinity symbol, which confuses him. Thankfully, he sees an option to activate voice guidance, so he clicks it and hears Grok's cousin explaining his new skills and abilities. She also tells Banaza that the slimes attacked because a monster luring spell was used on the bottomless bag, causing Banaza to realize that the king wants him gone for good. After using a spell to neutralize the dark magic on the bag, Banaza tries to explore the forest, but his digital assistant warns that the forest is filled with malicium, a deadly gas released by demons that can be fatal to humans. She then suggests using a purification spell, and after activating it, Banaza gets shocked by the spell's power. Around the same time, Princess Elizabeth tells her dad that he was wrong to intentionally send Banaza to the one forest where demons eat people for breakfast. The king tells her not to bother herself with such a worthless weakling, but then one of the subjects rushes in with news of the legendary purification spell. The king gets excited, thinking the blonde hero has already started his fight against the Dark Army, but the subject explains that the spell was used in the Delaveza forest, making him realize it was by the useless hero he cast out. By then, Banaza has just leveled up a lot because the spell unalived thousands of demons in the forest. Regardless, he decides to live in the city instead, but since he will easily get recognized, the voice assistant tells him to use a shape-shifting spell. Curious, Banaza tests it out by transforming into a baddie with more cake than the Cheesecake Factory. Instead of exploring his plots, he decides to go with a different male identity. His assistant then explains a teleportation spell, which Banaza uses to get into the city. He gets surprised by its effectiveness and tries to use it to go back to his world, but that fails. So he sets out to find a guild since he needs income to start a life here. Once there, he registers as an adventurer using the name Fleo and immediately starts looking for jobs. The next moment, he hears a little girl asking adventurers to escort her to the Delaveza forest so she can save her poor family, but no one is paying attention to her. Banaza gladly offers to help, but as soon as he mentions his teleportation spell, the entire guild freezes in shock because only the most powerful adventurers can use that spell. Just then, a knight named Balarasa and her squad of medieval Powerpuff Girls show up to interrogate him. After he offers to show them his abilities privately, they follow him to an alley where he activates the teleportation spell to return to the forest. Seeing this, Balarasa drops to her knees to apologize, and the others also start glazing Banaza. But then the little girl notices that all the malicium in the forest is gone. Banaza tries to explain that he purified the forest and yeeted all the demons, but his voice assistant warns that this little girl is also a demon. The next moment, the helpless cutie transforms into an overpowered lupine named Fenris and introduces herself as the sister of one of the infernal 4 demons. She then releases a deadly cloud of malicium that drops the girls to their knees. As Banaza tries to help, Fenris promises to take care of him after she is done with them, but Banaza uses the teleportation spell to get them all to safety. He then activates every skill he has to fight her. Fenris sees this and immediately attacks, but Banaza manages to escape using a jump skill. He then unleashes a barrage of spells to stop her, but none of them work until he activates a gravity amplifying spell. As she finally gets pinned down, Banaza asks the assistant for a spell to restrain Fenris, but when she suggests using a subjugation spell that gives him complete control over Fenris' mind and body, Banaza refuses. Fenris then tries every ability and spell in her arsenal to escape, but they all fail, so she surrenders and tells Banaza to send her to the afterlife because a defeated warrior is useless to the Dark Army. When he refuses and frees her, she gets surprised and reminds him that she is a powerful demon who has dedicated her entire life to attacking humans. Banaza still insists on freeing her and says he can't possibly unalive her back to life after she already surrendered. Fenris then reverts to a human form with a lot more plots than before. so Banaza quickly covers her cannons and offers to let her go if she promises never attack humans again. He then tries to get some clothes from the bottomless bag, but Fenris suddenly passes out. The assistant then tells Banaza not to worry, as it usually happens after a creature of her level uses too much magic. Hours later, Banaza is looking through his stats and trying to figure out why he can use powerful spells. Just then, Fenris wakes up, and after realizing that Banaza completely healed her, she wonders how one guy can have so much power. She then walks out to thank him and promises to never touch a human ever again. When she suddenly asks to become Banaza's slave, he gets shocked and rejects the offer, but Fenris continues begging and promises to do whatever he wants. He still tries to turn down the offer, so she uses her irresistible face card to win his heart. However, after agreeing to it, Banaza explains how he was summoned from another world and abandoned for not having any real powers. He tells Fenris that following him around will only make life difficult for her, but she still wants to be his slave and says he has become her master. Around the same time, the king had just called the hero into the throne room to ask why he returned with only a handful of soldiers. The supposedly powerful hero then claims that the kingdom's soldiers are a bunch of Sakura-level weaklings who couldn't last 5 minutes against the Dark Army. After claiming that he had to fight monsters while also saving them, he storms out, and the king immediately asks his assistant if it's true. Turns out, the hero was actually the weak and useless one because as soon as the fighting started, Bro turned the other way and never looked back. While the king starts to realize his foolish mistake, the hero gets frustrated because he has not gone up a single level since he first showed up, which makes him weak compared to any decent adventurer. Just then, his plot-heavy servant named Tsuya shows up to please him, so he decides to distract himself by going out with her. The next day, Banaza takes Fenris into the city, and as they head towards the guild, a merchant mistakes her for Banaza's wife. This makes him suggest that they act like a couple to avoid any suspicion, and Fenris gladly accepts, as she has always wanted to become the wife of a powerful alpha. Moments later, Banaza takes her to the guild, and after getting her registered as an adventurer, he decides to find a good-paying quest they can easily handle. Just then, the receptionist announces a quest to take down a group of psycho bears heading towards the city. Banaza refuses to accept it because these are the same psycho bears that made the hero piss his pants, but Fenris decides to take it so she can prove her worth to Banaza. After he uses the teleportation skill to get to a base, the guild designated for whoever accepts the quest, Fenris tells him to sit back and watch, but he decides to help out since he needs to test out some of his new skills. Right then, they hear screams and see that Balarosa and her girls have already been surrounded by the psycho bears. After Blossom gets knocked down, the bears try to rip her to shreds, but Banaza zaps them all until they pass out. The last bear then charges towards Bolano, but Fenris drops it with a leg kick to the spine. As expected, Balarosa and her squad of weaklings immediately start glazing Banaza and ask who his hot travel buddy is. When he says Fenris is just traveling with him, she gets heartbroken. A psycho bear then tries to attack, but after Fenris hits it with the death stare, it gets a heart attack and collapses. While Balarosa and the others try to make sense of what just happened, Fenris suggests taking the psycho bear as a pet to show off their accomplishments. Banaza refuses because he has no interest in showing off, but since the bear is still a very huge threat, he uses a subjugation spell on it before changing its form to a unicorn bunny. Minutes later, Balarosa, Blossom, Belano, and Birelli introduce themselves before begging Banaza to teach them how to fight as he does. Balarosa further explains how the king instructed all knights to get strong enough to defeat a psycho bear after what happened with the hero. Since they are obviously too weak to handle such powerful creatures on their own, they beg him to train them, but Banaza is not so sure he can teach them anything. Fenris, on the other hand, has already lost it because they are trying to take her man, but when Banaza reintroduces her as his wife, she reverts to her loving state and tells him to train them, since they obviously need it. The girls then ask for permission to live with them, and Fenris also supports this since she will get to share a bed with Banaza. Meanwhile, in the Dark Realm, another lupine named Illuminez has just informed the Dark, one of the purification spell Banaza used in the Delaveza forest. The Dark One is surprised to hear that some unknown nobody has such power, so she orders Illuminez to find this magic user at once. The next morning, Banaza wakes up to Fenris staring at him from the edge of the bed, so he asks what she is doing. She then reminds him that it's only natural for a wife to watch her husband like a creep while he sleeps. After recalling how she tried to ride his pogo stick last night, he wonders how long he will have to keep up this act. Fenris then tries to take his shirt off, but Balarosa walks in to ask about training. Minutes later, the overachiever comes face to face with a demon boar and tries to act tough, only to end up running for her life. Blossom then decides to attack, so Belano creates a barrier to hold the boar back. Using this opportunity, Birelli fires an arrow at the boar, but it bounces off its thick hide. While they all try to outrun the boar, Banaza and Fenris try to figure out a rookie-level training they can start with. Much later, Banaza takes them back inside to see the room he managed to build with the reward they got for taking out the psycho bears. After the girls thank him for being so generous, Fenris calls everyone out to eat, but Banaza gets horrified at the sight of the raw chunks of meat she served up. To save everyone from food poisoning, he decides to handle the cooking, and Balarosa offers to help. Afterwards, everyone gets surprised by how good the food looks, but Fenris gets insecure and refuses to eat the salad, claiming it's only for weak creatures. However, when Blossom offers to eat it, she forces herself to take a bite and falls in love with the taste. She then tries the steak and struggles to believe the flavors melting inside her mouth. When Banaza reveals that Balarosa is actually the genius behind the steak, Fenris gets insecure again and offers to make their next dinner. The next day, Banaza and Fenris submit a bunch of demon boars for assessment at the guild, and all the adventurers clamor in groups to gossip about how strong they must be. As Banaza starts to wonder if they are doing a little too much, Fenris tells him that she plans to handle some personal business in the city. He tries to go with her, but a demi-human named Leolith shows up and asks for some of his time so they can talk. Moments later, in an office, Leolith explains how Banaza's recent escapades have attracted attention from everyone in the kingdom, including the king, who now wants him to fight alongside the hero. As a reward, he will be granted the title of honorary knight along with anything he wants, but after thinking about his peaceful life with Fenris and his commitment to avoiding violence, Banaza rejects the offer. Much later, Fenris finally returns looking like a botched science project, but she refuses to tell Banaza that she joined a cooking class and spent the day ruining everything until the entire studio went up in smoke. Later that night, the hero hears of Banaza's strength and orders his recruitment so he can finally avoid risking his own life. However, after a month of constant begging, Banaza still refuses to become an honorary knight. After the messenger leaves, Fenris offers to make sure they never come back, but he tells her not to worry about it, as they are only doing their jobs. While he goes to check on Blossom and thanks her for fixing up the farm, Fenris tries to train Birelli, but the useless archer still wants to live in a delusional bubble where she never has to unalive monsters. After Banaza gives Bolano a special ring to amplify her abilities, she tries to put it on her ring finger, but Fenris threatens to chop it off if she even thinks about it. Just then, Balarosa begs Banaza to help her fight a monster, but Fenris cuts the monster in half before telling Balarosa to drop the act because she is obviously acting weak to get close to Banaza. As Balarosa tries to explain herself, Fenris notices that Eulimenes has been watching them from the woods. Much later, the girls are surprised to see that Fenris can finally cook something edible. Banaza is also shocked, so he asks how she learned all this, and she explains how she kept going to the cooking classes to become a better wife to him. She also admits that the entire process made her appreciate life as a human a lot more. Eulimenes struggles to believe that the once feared Fenris is now losing her senses to some average-looking dude. Just then, Fenris shows up and demands to know why she is stalking them. After taking Eulimenes inside for some tea, Fenris continues the interrogation because there is no way the Dark One's closest attendant just wandered into the woods and saw them. Eulimenes explains that she just wanted to know why the most feared female warrior has been sucking up to Banaza. Fenris easily says she is his wife, and after taking in the shock, Eulimenes notes that the Dark Forest is unusually free of demons. Banaza then says it's probably because of the purification magic he used, but this makes Eulimenes choke on her tea. After she tells Fenris that Banaza wiped out her brother and his troops, Banaza gets shocked and asks if this is true. Fenris then says she already suspected it, since it's extremely rare for a human to possess such power, but her brother was one of the Infernal Four and would hate to see her mourning a death caused by his own incompetence. She also insists that nothing will make her stop loving Banaza. However, Balarosa and the others get the shock of a lifetime, as they have been listening to the entire conversation and now know who they have been living with. After Bolano passes out, Eulimenes challenges Banaza to a duel, but Fenris warns him that she is just looking for an opportunity to taste his milk. Moments later, they head out for the duel, and Eulimenes immediately summons 2 spells to catch him off guard, but Banaza easily neutralizes both spells before using one of his skills to make her surrender. The next morning, they both tell Balarosa and the others to make a report to the king if they want to, but after thinking about it, Balarosa and the girls decide to keep their secret. Just then, they hear monsters approaching and rush out to see Eulimenes returning with a legion of dragons for payback. While the girls get terrified, Banaza gets excited because it's his first time seeing real dragons. However, when Eulimenes tries to attack, he locks in and uses a lightning spell to knock most of them out. As Eulimenes takes off with the remaining dragons, Blossom jokes that she could gain the title of Dragon Slayer by taking one of them down. Banaza agrees agrees and makes her throw the farming tool towards a dragon before he amplifies it with his abilities. After the dragon gets murked, Blossom actually levels up and receives the title, so Balarosa and the others beg for their turn, but it's already too late since the dragons have left. While she starts bawling her eyes out, Lord Gol sees this and decides to make his next move. The next day, Banaza creates a barrier around the house to alert them whenever someone dangerous approaches. Fenris then promises to deal with Eulimenas if she ever dares to return. All of a sudden, she recalls Eulimenas' stupid face and gets pissed, so Banaza tries to calm her, while also feeling guilty for what he did to her brother. Around the same time, Blossom takes a look at her stats and struggles to believe that she is now a dragon slayer. Birelli and Bolano join her to yap about all the benefits of the title, but then they notice Balarosa heading out for a training session and collectively wish they could be as disciplined as her. Moments later, Balarosa starts bawling her eyes out because she was only left to hide how sad she feels about not getting a dragon slayer title as well. This especially hurts her because having the title would have given her discarded noble family some of the respect it lost. Minutes later, she is still sulking when a strange man appears, asking for directions to Banaza's house. Balarosa immediately notices how unarmed he is, which makes no sense for someone coming out of the dark forest. She immediately draws her sword and asks for his true intentions, so he admits that he is from the Dark Army but claims he just wanted to have a talk with Fenris. After Balarosa agrees to tell Fenris about his visit, he leaves. The next moment, Banaza and Fenris catch up to her and ask who on earth she was speaking with. Balarosa says it was just a weird-looking dude, but Banaza explains how his voice assistant said it was the Dark One. While Fenris wonders why he used such a pathetic disguise, Balarosa pisses her pants because she just raised her sword to the demon lord himself. The next day, Gol shows up at the house, so Banaza and Fenris welcome him like some regular guest, while the girls hide in fear. For some reason, Balarosa ends up at the wrong place at the wrong time, and as she experiences multiple heart attacks, Gol asks Banaza to join his dark army and fight by his side. When Banaza refuses, Gol asks if he is considering the king's relentless efforts to recruit him, but Banaza explains that he has no intention of joining either side. Since he is from another world, he only wants to live in peace and doesn't even understand why they are fighting in the first place. Surprised, Gol asks why no one has told him about the war, so Fenris explains that it was pointless to bring up something with little relevance. Gol ignores this and tells Banaza that it started 5 centuries ago when the very first Dark One was summoned from another world. He sought to take control of their entire world, but the humans opposed him, so he built an army from the dark side to oppose them. Ever since then, the war has gone on relentlessly, with either side refusing to accept defeat or fight for peace. Now Gol admits that he is tired of the pointless bloodshed and wants to stop the fighting. However, with the risk of someone as powerful as Banaza joining the humans, he releases his power and says he has to stop them to protect his people. Surprisingly, Banaza barely flinches and maintains his stance on not picking either side, so Gol stops the mad rampage and promises to be back before leaving. Blossom and the others immediately rush to check on Balarosa, who seems to have lost touch with reality from being around so much power. The next day, she tries to get over everything, only to find Gol already having breakfast at the table like it's normal. Gol gets excited to see her and suggests that she join, but Balarosa takes off running and continues doing the same thing as the days go on, because Gol has simply refused to give up. However, they all fail to realize that a spy from the kingdom has been watching for the last few days. After he finally returns to the palace to inform the king, he thinks Banaza has betrayed humanity and gets furious. Elizabeth quickly suggests having a talk with Banaza to be sure he has actually switched sides first, but the king dismisses her, claiming she is not ready to rule a kingdom. Right then, the hero shows up and demands an army so he can personally punish Banaza for rejecting the king's offer. Around the same time, Eulimenas warns Gol against going to see Banaza on his own, but Gol says he has to keep trying to win Banaza over. Back at the house, Fenris has just asked Banaza if he decided to become a non-violent farmer because of who she really is. Banaza then explains how he has always wanted a life of peace and says it's who he has always been. This much kindness, despite his powers, makes Fenris love Banaza even more, but before she can really enjoy the moment, they hear a knock on the door. It's the hero, and he came with an entire army to punish Banaza for rejecting the king's offer and siding with demons. After yapping about his powers for a couple of minutes, he tells Banaza to join his army, thinking all that shouting sent shivers down Banaza's spine. As expected, Banaza calmly declines, but this pisses the self-proclaimed hero off, so he threatens to attack Banaza along with the girls if they don't convince him to change his mind. This finally gets to Banaza, but instead of unleashing his powers, he decides to relocate. He decides to start fresh somewhere else and suggests going alone, as he doesn't want to create more trouble for the girls. However, Fenris and the others start begging to come with him and say they only want a life where they get to learn more from him every day. Banaza gets moved by this and decides to take them along as well, so he activates the teleportation circle and vanishes along with the entire house and farm, while the hero loses his senses as he never thought Banaza was this powerful. Just then, Gol returns, and the soldiers immediately move to capture him. However, after taking a look at the empty space that used to be Banaza's house, Gol becomes convinced that the hero is behind it and goes off the rails in anger. He summons Ulaminas and the entire Dark Army to launch a full-scale attack on humanity. Meanwhile, Banaza has just settled into this new patch of land with the girls, and after explaining how he found it, he says they have nothing to worry about anymore. It has been several days since Banaza left with the girls, and now the Dark Army has destroyed most of humanity's villages and civilization. As they advance their forces towards the capital city, a soldier informs the king of the situation, and he realizes that they are out of options. He demands to know where the fake hero is, and after the soldiers explain that he has been hiding in one of his mansions since the war started, the king orders them to drag him out. As soon as the soldiers leave, the subject tells the king that the only way to survive is to cast a purification spell on the capital. The king gets terrified by this and asks if there is no other way, so the subject reminds him that they are down to their last strongholds and, as soon as the Dark Army invades the capital, it will be over for all of humanity. While the king starts to agree with this, another demon general shows up to tell Gol about the progress with the war. She suggests commencing a new attack, but Gol tells her to pull everyone out because he can already tell that the king's mages are about to cast a purification spell. As he predicted, the king, along with all his most powerful mages, summon a powerful purification spell that completely purifies the capital city and keeps them safe from any demon attack. Around the same time, Banaza returns home and sees Fenris, who has been waiting to greet him with a hug and a smile. She then asks if he would like to eat some real food, or if he's finally ready to taste the kitty. Instead of accepting the offer that would make little Johnny happy, Banaza decides to go for real food instead, so they sit around the dinner table. By then, all the mages in the capital city have ended up in a coma because the purification spell depleted almost all of their magic. To make matters worse, the king is also in a coma state, since he's also a mage. The good news is that the purification spell keeps them safe for 3 months, but with the king unable to function, Princess Elizabeth decides to take his place and suggests that they summon someone known as the Oracle. Hours later, the hero, along with his brain-dead assistant, gets kicked out of their mansion. As usual, he threatens the soldiers with loud talks about his power and how the king will be punished. But the soldiers don't care and toss their bags. The following day, the girls offer to take care of everything in the house, so Banaza can finally take Fenris out on a date. He tries to talk his way out of it, since they've never done this before, but Fenris grows impatient and drags him along because she has been dreaming of this day for ages. Several minutes later, they make it to the market, so Banaza tells Fenris to pick whatever she wants so he can get it for her. She gets excited by this and immediately starts shopping for items, but then he spots a special brush, so he decides to get that for her. A while later, Fenris is back at home, drooling over the brush while the other girls watch her and fight back the jealousy they feel. Soon after this, Banaza tries to get some shut-eye, but after realizing that Fenris is in the same bed with him, his glizzy activates. He quickly moves away and covers up before turning in the other direction, but Fenris cuddles up to him once again, leaving him with no choice but to sleep through his raging Excalibur. The following day, the hero takes Suye into the castle's treasury to find any kind of artifact to make him stronger than Banaza. After several minutes of searching, he hears a voice promising to give him strength and gets confused. Suya also gets worried because she cannot hear a thing, but then the hero follows the voice as it leads him to a hidden sword pressed into a stone. The voice tells him to pull the sword out. After initially hesitating, the hero pulls it out and gets knocked back by a whirlwind. The next moment, a djinn named Haya reveals herself and offers him 3 wishes in exchange for freeing her. Around the same time, Princess Elizabeth and her subjects have just met with the lady known as the Oracle, so Elizabeth asks for a way to keep the kingdom protected after the purification spell wears off. Before the Oracle can give her an answer, collars suddenly start appearing on all their necks, and as everyone panics, Elizabeth quickly realizes what is happening, so she tells the soldiers to head down to the treasury. The Oracle then explains that those collars can only be the work of an evil djinn who takes blood in exchange for fulfilling wishes. Everyone else remains confused, as they have never heard of this before, so Elizabeth tells them about a king from centuries ago who made a deal with this same djinn to defeat the Dark One ruling at the time. The djinn granted his wish, but in exchange, she took the lives of over half of the humans living at that time. This is why she was sealed away in the treasury. As everyone continues panicking, Elizabeth keeps her cool and asks the Oracle for a way out. After pulling out her deck of cards, the Oracle takes a quick reading and says the only way out is to find the true hero, who was also summoned to this world. The subjects quickly realize that she's talking about Banaza, so they suggest sending some soldiers to find him, but Elizabeth rejects that suggestion. She explains that they need every soldier to stay in the kingdom and offers to go find him herself. Meanwhile, Banaza is currently striking a deal with a local merchant who fell in love with his dragon scale shields. Balirosa, who has been watching this, immediately starts glazing him and talking about how she has always wanted to have a man like Banaza. The next moment, Fenris threatens to skin her alive if she even thinks of it anymore, so Balirosa promises to keep her intrusive thoughts to herself. Moments later, Banaza joins them, and as they walk back home, Fenris expresses how proud she is to be his wife, but also wishes that they could spend more time together. Banaza feels the same way, but before he can tell her, the voice assistant warns him that a djinn is catching up. Banaza immediately turns and sees Haya, who then says she's here to grant the hero's wish, which is to unalive him. As she raises her hand to strike, Fenris suddenly jumps in front of Banaza to defend him, but that single strike splits her insides open and sends her crashing to the ground. Banaza immediately tries to help, but Haya unleashes a barrage of fiery spells, so he starts creating shields to protect them. She continues attacking as Banaza tries to heal Fenris, but the voice assistant tells him that it's not possible to cure such an injury with his healing spell. As Banaza gets confused and tries to figure out the next step, he suddenly gets pissed and uses a time reversal skill to heal Fenris before promising to make Haya pay. After recalling all the special memories he has made with Fenris, Banaza charges in and lands one bone-shattering punch right between Haya's eyes. With blood leaking down her face, she gets shocked and asks how he even dares lay his hand on her. Banaza even responds by stomping her into the ground and unleashing several more powerful punches to break her face apart. She then tries to attack Banaza with a spell, but he easily neutralizes it, so she takes a look at his stats and realizes that his skills are infinite, making him the most powerful being on the planet. As Banaza continues pounding her, Fenris finally wakes up in time to see the scene and how pissed off he is. She gets moist in the nether regions because he has never fought so hard for her. However, after seeing the bloodlust in his eyes, Fenris recalls when he promised to lead a non-violent life and wonders if he's about to throw it all away in anger. By then, Banaza has just finished breaking every bone in Haya's body, so he grabs her by the neck to finish her off. Just as he's about to end it, Fenris hugs him and begs him to let go because she can't live with the fact that she made him lose himself. Surprised to hear her voice, he immediately drops Haya to make sure she's okay. Around the same time, Princess Elizabeth makes it to the outskirts of town with help from the few mages left. She immediately apologizes for making them use the last of their strength to help her, but they tell her not to worry about it, as they have already sworn loyalty to the throne. As she prepares to begin the search for Banaza, all their collars break apart, making Elizabeth realize that Haya didn't fulfill the hero's wish. While she tries to figure out what happened, soldiers surround the treasury and bang on the door, ordering the hero to come out and surrender. This makes him realize that Haya has failed, but right as he's about to give up hope, a black smoke emerges from the tomb where the sword was left. A spirit then possesses Tsuya and introduces herself as Dama, the Grand Mage of Midnight. She offers to grant the hero the strength he seeks, and before he can react, she transforms him into a rampaging minotaur. She then makes him destroy everything in his path and decides to finally get her revenge on everyone related to the royal family, since they were the ones who sealed her away. Once outside, she sees the teleportation circle Elizabeth used and decides to start by clapping her first. Meanwhile, Banaza has just healed Haya, and after waking up, she gets surprised and asks why he would restore her body. Banaza then says it's only because Fenris survived her attack, but they still decide to do something about her, since they can't let her go free after everything she's done. Banaza considers sealing her away again, but he quickly trashes the idea, since she might trick another pathetic loser into freeing her. Haya gets surprised that he knows her stats, so he explains how he used a memory projection spell to figure out how she made that deal with the hero. While Haya struggles to believe that a human can possess such power, Banaza continues thinking of what to do with her. The next moment, Fenris suggests that she join their family as his servant, but naturally, Banaza is against this, since she literally just tried to end her life. Fenris then says it only happened because she let her guard down. She reminds him that Haya is way too dangerous to be left alone, so Banaza takes a moment to think before agreeing to make Haya his servant. As Banaza stretches out his hand to help her up, Haya gets overwhelmed by the kindness in his eyes. She then decides to pledge loyalty to him, but can't help recalling how pissed he looked a couple of seconds ago. She gets moist in the special spot and considers stealing him from Fenris, but she notices this and immediately regrets her decision to bring her into the family. Right then, Banaza takes a look at the destroyed town and decides to rewind time again to fix everything, but Haya tells him to stop and warns that using such magic is extremely dangerous. She further explains that the time reversal spell messes with everybody outside the spell's radius and is only safely used by Jinn on her level. Banaza then asks how he could use the spell, so Haya explains the meaning of the infinity sign on his stats. Turns out he has an ability called Epiphany that allows him to copy and replicate any spell that has been used on him. After realizing the danger he would be putting everyone in, Banaza decides to fix the town with regular old magic. A couple of hours later, he returns home and introduces the rest of the girls to Haya. As expected, they all get terrified being so close to a djinn, so Balarosa offers to take her to her room. Much later, she returns to the living room and finds Banaza lost in thought. After a long conversation, where they both talk about their current issues, Balarosa thanks Banaza for everything he and Fenris have done for her, and says she will continue figuring things out with their help. Moments later, Banaza returns to his room and sees Fenris at the edge of the bed, also lost in thought. As he tries to check on her, she suddenly grabs his arm and throws him down on the bed before asking if he plans to return to his old world now that he can use a djinn's magic. Seeing the troubled look on her face, Banaza explains that he has no plans of going back because he loves the life they're building together. He then asks Fenris if she is ready to make their marriage a real thing, but she is surprised by this, so Banaza explains that he really wants nothing more than to live a peaceful and happy life with her. After Fenris agrees and says she has always seen herself as his wife, he decides to give her the marriage night special. Unfortunately, they hear a voice and realize that Haya has been watching them this entire time. They both tell her to leave, but Haya insists that she has to watch them clap and offers to make herself invisible if they have a problem with it. The following day, Elizabeth begins her search for Banaza, but after hours of asking everybody she meets, she ends up with no leads. Around the same time, Fenris has just served up breakfast for everyone and reveals that Haya actually helped her make it. They all get shocked, as they never expected the psychotic Jinn to be good at cooking. Fenris then explains that she has probably decided to accept her role as Banaza's latest concubine. While they all eat, Fenris tells them that they still have to take care of a couple of things around the house. But this makes Balarosa and the other girls feel useless because they haven't been doing much recently. As soon as they're done eating, Blossom heads out to the field and immerses herself in work, while Byerley returns to the stables to check on her horses, all in a bid to prove that she can make herself useful as well. While the others grind for Banaza's recognition, Belano is currently in her room, hating herself because she still has not found anything to do. She then recalls that her dad and brother are powerful mages and starts to regret her decision to follow a completely different path. Before she spirals, though, she recalls how patient Banaza has been with her and how he takes his time helping her get stronger, so she decides to focus on that. All of a sudden, they hear someone screaming at the door, so they rush outside and spot Byerley. They also notice that Blossom's crop field is being destroyed by a rampaging magical horse. As the horse suddenly turns its sights on them, Belano creates a magic barrier to stop it from getting inside. Right then, Balarosa shows up and says that she actually brought the horse back from home because she simply couldn't watch it bleed out. Right then, Byerley realizes what the issue is, so she makes Sabe return to its original form, before picking a rope and tossing it over at the beast, then calming it down. As soon as she manages to pull this off, the girls glaze her abilities, while she asks Blossom if they can use the land left on the property to train the horse. Several minutes later, Banaza is with Fenris, taking a tour of the city and enjoying their time together as lovebirds. As they have to conduct some business with a merchant in the city, they consider heading back when Banaza suddenly notices that the sky is getting darker. As they all watch in shock, Dama shows up with the hero, who is now a brain-dead monster. While Dama immediately aims for the princess, Haya tells Banaza and Fenris that Dama is actually a sorceress who wanted to rule the kingdom before she was sealed away permanently in the treasury. Since it's mainly her fault that the monster is out, she offers to take care of it, and Banaza reminds her to keep the innocent people safe. By then, Dama has just led the rampaging hero to attack some civilians, but Haya steps in at the last moment to block her attack. This makes Dama lose her senses, but as she starts firing off attack after attack, Haya continues dodging them and reminds her that Jin can't get hurt easily. Realizing her mistake, Dama decides to summon dark spirits from the earth, but the rampaging hero absorbs them. Before the fight can go any further, Banaza uses his abilities to cancel and neutralize the control spell, basically freeing the hero. Haya then casts a sealing on Dama and forces the spirits out of her body. The next moment, Haya swallows Dama and says she did it to absorb her power so she can be an even better servant to Banaza. With that taken care of, they all decide to head back, but Princess Elizabeth finally catches up and immediately introduces herself to Banaza. She thanks him for essentially saving their kingdom multiple times and apologizes for the way her father and the hero mistreated him since the day he first got summoned. When she asks him to return to the kingdom as the true hero, Banaza turns her down and says he's not interested in some worthless title because he already has all the kitty he wants. Much later, at home, the girls tell him about their ideas to expand his estate by buying up more land. As he listens, they explain that it would help the farm expand as well as improve the training conditions for the horses Byerley is taking care of. They all get excited to help Banaza get more land until he reveals what it would actually cost to pull it off. Their enthusiasm disappears as they realize that they greatly underestimated the cost, but thankfully, Banaza decides to handle the finances for them. They immediately start feeling bad and ask for a way to repay him, so he decides to take 30% of whatever profit they make from the new land. Much later, Banaza tells Blossom to try growing some super rare crops in a field, as that would give her an edge in the market. He and Haya offer to help her plant with magic, but Blossom refuses, saying that she wants to grow the crops without magic. After Belano tells her to get used to using magic for good, they notice that she's in her maid uniform and ask why, and she reveals her decision to join a magic academy. Turns out she just got hired as a teacher, so she thanks Banaza for everything everything he's ever taught her, including how to use her magic when she's not fighting for her life. Listening to this, Blossom decides to let them use magic on the farm. She then selects a portion of the land to test it out so she can compare the difference between magically grown crops and naturally grown crops. A while later, as everyone becomes engrossed in their own work, the lovebirds watch and feel proud to have created such a warm environment. Banaza then tells Fenris about his dream of opening a shop. He pulls out a ring he created from a stone to symbolize their love, and Fenris gets extremely excited for this. Around the same time, the hero, along with Tsuya, is currently in jail, continuing to rage and promising to take his revenge as soon as he gets out. Several nights later, in a dream, Balarosa finds herself in a dark wedding dress, being congratulated by Eulimenes. Before she can ask what is going on, Gaul walks in and tells her they are about to get married. She gets terrified and tries to leave, but the entire dark army assembles and promises to conquer the world as a gift to their marriage. Balarosa immediately tries to stop them, but then Gaul pulls her close for a sloppy kiss. Thankfully, she finally wakes up, but the fact that she was even dreaming about Gaul makes her frustrated, so she starts screaming while Blossom and the others struggle to enjoy their sleep. The next day, she joins Fenris in the kitchen to make cupcakes, and when Fenris notices her foul mood, Balarosa simply says she has been suffering because of nightmares. The next moment, Fenris grabs her and asks if it's because she has fallen in love. Apparently, lupines always have dreams of their partner's glizzy once they develop feelings, so she suspects that the same might be happening to Balarosa. Just then, Blossom shows up with the others and starts speculating that it must be Lord Gaul, since he kept coming over just to see her. All this talk of love makes everyone curious about how Fenris fell in love with Banaza, so she decides to talk about it instead of interrogating Balarosa. Fenris then explains how Banaza's soft side always intrigued her because, unlike him, lupines always solve their problems with their blood. Seeing someone capable of such restraint despite having such powers made her heart beat for him alone. Just then, they realize that Banaza has been listening this entire time, but Fenris doubles down and says she had to let everyone know why she loves him so much. The next moment, Banaza hears an alert and tells them that a powerful demon just got past the barrier he created for the city. While they talk about their next steps, Elizabeth learns from her subjects that the coins Banaza donated are coins issued by the castle to a select few individuals. This means that no average adventurer with no evident ties to royalty should have access to such coins. After racking their brains, the subject reminds her that the only regular person to receive these coins was the summoned hero who got sent to the dark forest with a bottomless bag. Elizabeth quickly puts two and two together and realizes that they can't even recruit Banaza because the king humiliated him and tried to unalive him with the cursed bag. However, she decides to start by begging for his forgiveness. Just then, a knight rushes in to tell her that the hero has escaped with Tsuya, so Elizabeth orders a search party to be sent out to find them. Moments later, the hero and Tsuya find a bush to hide in, and while doing so, she asks if he stole anything of worth before they left the treasury. He then pulls out a bottomless bag and says it probably holds enough money to buy them a whole new life, but after looking at its contents, he only finds a pouch of water and a treasure chest. Curious, he pulls out the chest and gets shocked to find a magical shovel. Right then, the guards hear their voices and run over to capture them, but the hero manages to dig a massive hole in seconds thanks to the shovel. However, they now have to figure out a way to climb out. Around the same time, Eulimenes reports to Gaul and suggests resuming their advance on the capital, but Gaul refuses, saying that they have to find Banaza first. Eulimenes disagrees with this and says they can easily sacrifice some soldiers to get past the purification spell, but Gaul still refuses. When she continues bringing it up, he rises from the throne with a look that sends shivers down her spine, but instead of folding her like a lawn chair, Gaul pats her on the head and claims to understand her concern before insisting that the best play is to find Banaza. While they continue talking, a demon named Funfun, who's been listening this entire time, rushes back to Uigard, Gaul's younger brother. After she explains Gaul's plan to recruit Banaza into the Dark Army, Uigard loses it and starts trashing the place, along with Funfun's face. She then tries to explain why Gaul is so obsessed with Banaza's power, but Uigard only cares about the fact that Gaul is friendly with a human. He then decides to fight Gaul and take over as the new Dark One. Back in town, Banaza and Fenris decide to walk around for a bit to admire all the new businesses being built. However, after seeing a popular local spot in ruins, they stop to ask the owner why she is not rebuilding. The old lady then explains how her suppliers were also affected by the attack and says she can't go through the stress of rebuilding her business from scratch at this age. This ruins the mood as Banaza and Fenris head out, but after seeing other new businesses, he suggests that they focus on the fact that people will always find a way to survive. To further lighten the mood, he suggests getting something to eat, but just as they find a restaurant, Balarosa shows up and offers to treat them. Fenris gets a little upset as she planned to spend time alone with Banaza, but then Balarosa explains how she finally went up a rank and started receiving more pay. This is all because of the training she has received from them. and the treat is her way of expressing gratitude. Right then, Haya shows up to warn them that a powerful demon is approaching, but it's just Gol. He ends up joining them for lunch, and while Balarosa freaks out as usual, Gol explains how he occasionally visits human towns to observe them. This pisses Balarosa off, so she accuses him of spying for the good of demons, and Gol easily admits to it. However, he explains that humans are not exactly innocent because they have always attacked demons unprovoked. Haya also notes that demons produce malicium naturally, so they can't help the fact that their nature is harmful to humans. Gol also adds that most demons can be extremely aggressive, which is why peaceful coexistence has always felt like an unattainable dream. Seeing how bad the mood has gotten, Gol decides to leave but promises to return soon. Much later, as they all head home, Banaza thinks about everything Gol explained and realizes that this world is still similar to his, in the sense that demons and humans still struggle to coexist. This makes him emotional, so he hugs Fenris from behind and asks for a couple of minutes to enjoy her warmth. She gets flustered at first, but eventually melts into his arms. The next day, while having breakfast, Banaza and the others praise Fenris for another Michelin star meal, but she tells them it's all because of her teacher, Mileno. She had actually gone back a few days ago to thank Mileno for helping her secure the ring by making amazing meals for Banaza. Mileno then offered to teach her the special recipe they are all eating right now. Just then, they hear the bell, so Banaza goes to welcome Gol, but this time, it's Elizabeth. Naturally, they all get surprised, but the real shock sets in when Elizabeth calls Banaza by his real name, not the alias he gave her the other day. Moments later, they all get settled inside, but then Elizabeth asks everyone else to leave so she can speak with Banaza in private. Fenris immediately tells her to forget it because she is in no place to make requests after the humiliation they put Banaza through. Elizabeth admits that she is right, so Banaza tells Balarasa and the others to leave while Fenris remains at his side. Elizabeth then drops to her knees and apologizes for everything Banaza had to endure because of her father. Banaza tells her not to worry, as he is over it, but then he asks for the real reason she came all this way, because it's obviously not just for a simple apology. When she suddenly pulls out a map showing the exact location of the kingdom's armies, Banaza gets shocked and asks why she would share such information with him. Elizabeth then explains that the purification spell will soon wear off, and with the mages still recovering, it would be impossible to create a new one. As a result, she has sent their forces to strategic locations across the kingdom, but they are still outnumbered by the Dark Army. She wants him to help them protect what's left, but Fenris immediately flips out and asks why she is trying to get Banaza involved in a war he keeps trying to avoid. The next moment, Elizabeth reveals that her father will soon recover and will most likely resume his plan to capture Banaza for siding with the demons. Fenris interprets this as a threat, but Elizabeth explains how she plans to make her father relinquish the throne and pay for his wrongs. Fenris still believes that Elizabeth is plotting to use Banaza to her advantage until Elizabeth explains that telling them about the army's location is her way of proving that Banaza is not actually working with the demons. This would essentially force her father to accept his mistake and also give her the support she needs to ascend the throne. After thanking Banaza for listening, Elizabeth begs him to protect the innocent civilians before leaving. Around the same time, the hero and Suya are still on the run, but Suya starts complaining of hunger, so he reaches into the bag to give her a snack. She gets surprised by his kindness, but he is equally shocked that she has chosen to stick with a pathetic loser like him. Suya admits that he usually acts like a part of his brain never made it out of the womb, but he has always chosen to help her when he could have easily ditched her to complete his escape. Unfortunately, their sweet moment gets interrupted when a demon spider wraps them in a thick web on Funfun's command. Later that night, Banaza gets lost in thought again, considering everything that has happened recently. He then tells Fenris that they have to make this world a better place because he wants their offspring to be able to play with both demons and humans. Several days later, locals start evacuating to safer locations to avoid the Dark Army. Hours later, a little girl tries to pack up her fruits, failing to realize that some demon soldiers are about to attack until it's too late. Thankfully, Banaza and Fenris save her at the last moment. When Fenris asks Banaza why they are doing this for free, he explains that accepting money from the princess would mean he has sided with the humans, which would definitely trigger a hostile response from Gol. Just then, one of the demons realizes who Fenris is, so he asks why she is siding with a human. Banaza then says she is his partner and threatens to unleash his true powers if they don't back off. Fenris supports this and says it's pointless to fight because they can't get past the barrier. The next moment, a Cyclops walks up, claiming he can easily destroy it. Fenris quickly tells Banaza that the Cyclops is actually a powerful warrior who works for Uagard. The Cyclops also recognizes her, but he starts insulting her brother and claims all lupines are a bunch of spineless weaklings. This pisses Fenris off, so she asks Banaza for permission to put the one-eyed dingus on a stretcher. Banaza accepts, so she walks out of his barrier and immediately starts dodging the Cyclops' attacks. After she lands several minor attacks across its body, the Cyclops mocks her again and asks if this is all she can do. Fenris then explains that she is only holding back because of Banasa, else he would have become her lunch by now. The next moment, she uses a position-swapping spell to yeet him into the air. He then launches his club at her head, but she uses the same spell to swap places again, using his own club against him. Like that isn't enough, she uses several trees to pin him down using the wounds she created earlier. Despite this, the Cyclops orders his soldiers to attack, so Banasa captures them all and stops Fenris from attacking. He then heals the Cyclops, who immediately asks what is going on. Banasa explains that he wants to live peacefully with demons and humans alike. However, he is also prepared to send them to Hades if they insist on doing things the hard way. After they finally retreat, Fenris asks Banasa why he didn't torture them for daring to attack, so he reminds her of his mission to make the world a better place by avoiding violence. Just then, the locals return to thank him for saving the little girl and are surprised to see him with Fenris. Banasa then uses this opportunity to also teach them the importance of coexisting with demons. When they once again thank him for everything, Banasa tells them to thank Elizabeth instead. With that, he hops on Fenris' back and rides off to continue helping innocent locals. Soon enough, Elizabeth hears about this masked vigilante who has been saving locals with a demon lupine and only mentions her name when locals try to thank him. She quickly realizes that it's Banasa and promises to reward him when the time comes. Meanwhile, Gull, who has been watching Banasa, gets interrupted by Ginal, who then explains what Uigard has been up to. Around the same time, Funfun presents the hero and Suya to Uigard as the sacrifices he will make to attain enough power to defeat Gull. Minutes later, Gull shows up at Banasa's place and asks if he can stay with them for a little while. Banasa gets shocked by such a request, so he asks why, and Gull decides to tell them how his own brother betrayed him. After hearing about Uigard's insurrection attempt, Gull immediately rushed towards the castle. By then, Euliminus was already asking the Inferno Four for help in stopping Uigard, but they all refused and said he needed to be reminded of his power and place as the Dark One. Frustrated, Euliminus rushed to the throne room and tried to attack him all on his own, but he easily smacked her away like a worthless housefly, leaving Euliminus in pain and barely able to move. Thankfully, Gull finally pulled up and told her to leave so he could face his brother. Surprisingly, though, when Uigard got ready to fight, Gull suddenly said he was not interested in the duel. Uigard then said he had no choice but to accept it, because everyone now believed that he had grown too soft to be the ruler. He further claimed that even the Inferno Four agreed that Gull had become weak, and after listening to all this, Gull asked for examples of his incompetence. After they started with his recent addiction to humans and refusal to send their armies into war, Gull asked Uigard if he was also responsible for the recent attack on human villages. Uigard admitted to everything and said he couldn't miss a perfect opportunity to strike, so Gull turned to the Inferno Four and asked if they were aware of this. They remained silent, refusing to give a direct answer, so Gull took off his Dark One ring and threw it over to his brother before saying that he would happily give up the throne if they no longer believed in him. As he turned to leave, Uigard got pissed off and told him to come back and fight, so Gull decided to remind him who's boss and used a single kick to send him flying through several walls. He then faced the Inferno Four once again and apologized for looking weak and losing their trust. Back in the current time, Banasa and Fenris are surprised to hear all this, but as they continue talking about it, Balarosa walks in and gets the shock of a lifetime, as she never expected to see Gull in the house again. When she realizes that Banasa is actually considering giving them a place, she gets terrified. Moments later, Gull tells all of them not to worry about him, as he's no longer the Dark One. Blossom then asks why his soldiers have been attacking if he truly gave up the throne, so Fenris explains to them that it's actually his brother Uigard giving out orders. This makes them all feel a little more comfortable being around Gull. However, Banasa still checks to make sure they're all okay with it, and that's when they notice that Balarosa is still not good with being around the former demon lord. Fenris notices and coerces her into accepting it. The following day, Gull starts looking for some kind of work to do around the house, but every time he tries to help the girls, he ends up ruining something with his aura. Eventually, though, he finds Banasa in the workshop, cooking up new weapons, and decides to help him out. While they both chat, Fenris and Euliminus watch in secret, and Euliminus complains about how easily the Dark One is getting friendly with a human. Several hours later, they sit outside to have dinner, and while everyone else seems to be having a good time, Balarosa isolates herself from the group and eats her food slowly, as she's still struggling to accept that Gull is a good guy. Much later, she walks to the balcony to think about everything, but then Banasa and Fenris show up with snacks to talk to her. Banasa already knows that she's upset about Gull, so she admits to it and says she can't simply look past the fact that he's a Dark One who has been responsible for multiple wars and casualties over the years. Banasa agrees with her and says she doesn't have to put on an act if she feels uncomfortable around Gull. Hearing this makes her feel a lot better about her fears, so the very next day, she finally decides to speak with Gol. She promises to keep a close eye on him, as she has yet to trust him. He sees this as an opportunity to build a relationship with her, so he gladly accepts it and tries to shake her hand, but she refuses even that and says he can only have it after gaining her trust. Around the same time, the hero and Suya finally escape from the demon castle and run for their lives to make it to another kingdom, since they are still wanted by the princess. Back in the demon realm, Uegard is currently losing his mind because the demon army keeps getting beaten every time they try to attack a human civilization. He demands to know what on earth is going on, so Fufun explains that humans seem to have developed better ways to stop their attacks. Uegard refuses to hear anything further and tells her to summon every soldier they have to overpower the humans. She tries to explain why it's not that easy, but he storms out and almost sends her to the hospital in the process. Just then, the Infernal Three, who have been talking among themselves, agree that they simply cannot win this war with Uegard leading them because he has no sense of what it means to be a true leader. As they try to figure out a new way out of this, Fufun joins the conversation and says she already has a plan to improve their soldiers' motivation. A couple of days after this, Fenris goes out with Banaza and wins a surprise ticket to a hot spring. She gets excited, thinking this is finally going to give her some alone time to ride his pogo stick, but unfortunately, the ticket is actually for a whole family. She immediately tries to switch to another one, but Banaza has already seen it and insists that they go with everyone else and enjoy the hot springs as a group. Much later, as they head toward the hot spring, Fenris remains upset until she discovers that the hot spring actually increases the possibility of making offspring. After imagining what it would feel like to have offspring with him, she gets excited and immediately pulls one of the hot spring workers aside to ask where the fertility hot spring is. The worker explains with a map and wishes her luck. The other girls then change into the yukatas provided by the inn. However, while heading to the changing room, Blossom bumps into Uegard, who is currently disguised as a regular human. She immediately tries to apologize, but after seeing his dark expression, she gets scared. Luckily, Fufun quickly fixes this before Uegard exposes himself. As soon as Blossom leaves, Uegard demands to know why she interfered, so Fufun reminds him of their mission and begs him not to do anything just to ruin it. She then gives him a necklace that's meant to suppress his powerful Malicium, and this successfully calms him down. As they walk past Gol, Alaminas, and Fenris, the three of them easily see through the disguise. Gol then decides to go talk with his brother, but Fenris immediately tells him not to even think about it because he will obviously end up in a crazy duel that will ruin her plan to get creamed by Banaza. She then grabs him to go to the special hot spring with her so they can get down to business. Haya sees this and tries to join them, but Fenris threatens to pull her hair out of her scalp, so he decides to let them enjoy their alone time. Moments later, they find the hot spring, but when she tries to pull him into the water, he refuses because it's actually a lady's bath. After going to the other side, Banaza leans on the wall to talk to her and promises to give her a proper honeymoon once this mess is over. This actually makes her happy, so she decides to save her plans for another day. By then, everyone else has already met up for food, but Ballarosa continues staring at Gol, so Blossom asks if she has finally caught feelings for the Dark One. Ballarosa then claims she's only keeping a close eye on him, but when Gol suddenly compliments her outfit, she turns red as a fire hydrant. For some reason, this makes Olimenas a little jealous, so as they all head out, she tells Ballarosa about her commitment to observing the Dark One, and this makes Ballarosa realize that she has been craving his demon glizzy this entire time. Around the same time, Uegard tries to enjoy his meal with his squad, but he quickly gets bored and asks for some kind of entertainment. Fufun then decides to dance for him, but her horrible moves piss him off even more, so he shuts her face and tells the demons to lighten the mood by roasting each other. As expected, this turns into a brawl and eventually causes their Malicium to leak at the exact same time the hero shows up with Tsuya. They plan to have some rest with any money he managed to swipe, so the hero reaches into his bag and grabs a jewel, which he thinks can be traded in. However, it suddenly starts sucking all the Malicium released by the demons and drags them until it breaks through the wall. By the time Fufun catches up to the jewel, it attaches itself to the hero and releases all the dark matter into his body until he gets corrupted. Seconds later, the entire place starts collapsing, so Banaza uses his magic to keep everything in place before sending Fenris to go figure out what's going on. She immediately takes off with her plots exposed. While she's searching for the cause, the other girls see this massive creature currently rampaging inside the building, and after taking one look, Gol tells them that it is the embodiment of dark matter. Uliminas then spots the jewel around the hero's neck and explains how it amplifies Malicium before Ballarosa decides to rush in and help everyone still inside. When Gol tells them to stay out of it since Banaza is already helping, the girls refuse and insist on doing something regardless of how dangerous the situation is. This motivates Gol, so he asks Uliminas if she also wants to help. This surprises her since he never once asked for her opinion when he was the Dark One. After she says yes, they get teleported to the roof. After Fenris shows up from the other side, the infernal 3-spot Gol and immediately start calling out to him. Uigard notices this and gets pissed off, so he also charges toward the roof to fight. Balarosa sees this and thinks that Gol has already betrayed them by siding with the demons, so she runs towards the bathroom to tell Banaza. In the meantime, Uigard unleashes a flurry of attacks, but Gol easily blocks everything with a spell, which only infuriates him. After Balarosa finally finds Banasa and tells him what's going on, Banasa tells her there's no way Gol has betrayed them, because he is simply not the type to do so. He then decides to continue holding up the inn with his magic and trusts that Gol will sort things out with his brother. Around the same time, the hero, who is still a raging monster, turns his focus to Gol. After he tells Eulimenes that Uigard has the ability to control Melicium, she realizes that the only option is to separate the hero from the jewel. Fenris agrees with this and immediately punches the hero until the jewel separates from him, causing the monster to vanish. With the monster taken care of, Gol tells Eulimenes to make sure no one else gets involved in the duel. As they both resume their duel, Uigard tries to tell the other demons, but they have already decided not to interfere since it's clearly a battle for the throne and the fate of all demonkind. As Uigard continues throwing punches, Gol keeps up his spell that reflects every single attack. This frustrates Uigard, so he decides to go even harder, but after he finally manages to land some strikes, Gol grabs him by the face and uses a powerful spell that seals his power away. Despite this, Uigard continues hurling insults toward his brother, and this makes the manager of the hot springs worried that he might start another battle, so she orders her staff to find talismans. Using them, they successfully manage to capture Uigard and his group of demons before teleporting them out of the building. By then, Fenris is still smacking daylight out of the hero, so Eulimenes asks why she's going this far. She explains that it's the only way to remove any dark matter left in his body. Balarosa then tells her that Banaza wants everyone out, so he can fix the inn, and Fenris decides to release the hero. After Banaza uses a powerful spell to fully restore the hot springs, everyone starts cleaning up the place, while some of the workers chase the hero and Suya until they dig another hole to hide in. Minutes later, the manager thanks Banaza and everyone else for their help before telling them to enjoy the rest of the day. Fenris gets excited to hear this because she can finally try to get cracked. Hours later, while everyone else is having fun in the spring, Eulimenes joins Balarosa in the water and notices that her milkers are way bigger than they look in her outfit. Naturally, she gets insecure. Meanwhile, Banaza and Gol enjoy some alone time in the bath and talk about everything that has happened so far. After commending his commitment to living peacefully with both species, Gol admits that the best way forward is to build a world where demons and humans accept each other. Soon after this, they all meet up for dinner, and one of the waitresses slips Fenris a special pie known for boosting the smashing mood. While they all eat, Balarosa thanks Gol for saving them from his psychotic brother. After dinner, Banaza takes Fenris outside to talk, and when he asks how she feels about humans, she admits to actually enjoying their company, especially after all the time she has spent with him and the other girls. She also asks why he suddenly brought this up, so Banaza says he needs all her support if he's going to accomplish his goal of merging both species. After Fenris promises to stay by his side no matter what, they finally share a steamy kiss before making creamy pies. The following day, they all start leaving, but everyone notices how excited Fenris is and realizes that she must have had a really good night with Banaza. A couple of days after this, life returns to normal at the house as they continue doing what they do best. Blossom continues working on her farm with help from Haya, Bolano becomes a magic teacher, while Birelli continues taking care of her horses. Balirasa also becomes a full-time adventurer and helps Banaza and Gol test out the weapons they make during her missions. As the days go on, Elizabeth also takes control of the entire kingdom as she initially planned, but her father escaped the kingdom after his recovery. As a result, she sends soldiers to find him. Meanwhile, the hero and Suya are still on the run. Much later, everyone gathers for the usual family dinner, and Banaza takes the opportunity to express how glad he is that they built such an amazing family together. Will Banaza remain loyal to Fenris now that he has so many baddies who are also obsessed with him? And will Balarosa finally let Gol crack? Comment part 2 to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and turn on post notifications if you enjoyed this video.